Hi friends, welcome to Meals with Maria. Today I have 11 extreme budget meals for you. I went through the archives and found the absolute creme de la creme, best of the best budget meals that are extremely inexpensive but also extremely delicious. You're not going to be sacrificing on flavor at all with these guys. So enjoy. This first recipe is a slow cooker black bean soup. And we need 1 medium bell pepper, cored, seeded, and diced. And I did not have a red bell pepper, but I did have a green one. And I knew that I was going to make another recipe the next day, and that also required a green pepper, and I only had one. So we just split the green pepper in half. It still tasted delicious. Both meals were absolutely fine with half the green pepper. It was plenty of pepper, plenty of flavor. Even like in my family, I don't love peppers, so they were not missing it by any means, but it did add the right flavor. So, I mean, use what you have. Sometimes even if I can get like one of those little containers of roasted red peppers from the Dollar Tree, I will use that in a recipe like this. You don't always need all of the ingredients, or sometimes you can cut things down and you still get all of the good flavor. So yeah, just slice up your green pepper, and then you're gonna want 1 medium onion diced. And I just talked about onions in my $10 or less video, and I will post that below in the description box if you haven't watched it yet. But basically, onions are an amazing budget-friendly thing to keep on hand. You can find pounds of them for like $1.99, and they pretty much give flavor to everything. Now, if you don't have onions or you don't have money for onions, then it's absolutely fine to just buy onion powder and use that instead. And meals like this, I have often substituted garlic powder or onion powder, and it turned out absolutely delicious. So just your choice whether you want to buy the fresh, or if you have the powder on hand already and you are really on a tight budget, go ahead and use the onion powder and it will still taste delicious. What I like about this recipe is it really is a true chop, dump, and go. A lot of times when you have onions and peppers, you do need to cook those prior to putting them in the crock pot, but in this case you do not. To the onions and peppers, I'm adding 2 bay leaves and then 1 pound of uncooked black beans. Now, I know you're supposed to wash them, and I always forget, and it always turns out fine. So, to each their own. Spices, add 1.5 tablespoons of chili powder, 1 tablespoon of ground cumin, and 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. And you're also going to want 3 cloves of minced garlic. Similar to the onion, if you have garlic powder instead, you can use that as a substitute, probably about 1/2 teaspoon per clove. And then I happen to have vegetable stock on hand, so I decided to use that. I used 32 ounces of that, and then I added another 16 ounces of water and 2 teaspoons of chicken bouillon to this. So if you have chicken bouillon, that is always a great budget alternative to a stock, or you can save your vegetable pieces, save your meat pieces, and make stock on your own. Another alternative is always just water and salt. It does work. You want to cook this on low for 8 to 10 hours. There's not really a high cooking alternative here because these are dried beans and they need a lot of time to sit and get cooked. But as you can see, they cooked up perfectly in about 8 hours. So it does take a while, but you get a lot. And you saw how much water I added there, like it seemed really soupy. It does not end up being a very soupy soup. There is just a lot of beans in this, and that's not a bad thing. It's very hearty, it's very filling, and it is absolutely delicious. Like, my husband was so shocked. He said, "This is really flavorful. Wow, thank you." Like, really surprised by how delicious a black bean soup could be. And I served it with a little bit of Greek yogurt because that's what I have, but you can use sour cream, some cilantro, and cheddar cheese. And I cooked up some Jiffy cornbread for real cheap, and this was our dinner. Even the kids liked it. And we had leftovers. So the next food we're going to make is a minestrone soup. So I'm just cooking up all of my kidney beans, and you want to soak those overnight and then cook them for about an hour in about 10 cups of water. And this is what you get. Now, I had enough beans there that I had those left over in that container. I put about half of them into my soup. Now I'm pouring in about 12 cups of water and 10 chicken bouillon cubes. Then you want 1 can of drained diced mixed vegetables with potatoes, or you could use frozen if that's what you have, and then 1 can of Hunt's tomato sauce. I'm adding in 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of oregano, and 2 teaspoons of dried basil. Then I'm mixing this really well, and I'm just going to bring it up to a simmer, letting everything combine and cook together. And at this point, I'm going to add 2 cups of my dry macaroni. And you just want to cook this for another 10 minutes until your macaroni is fully cooked through. And here you can see I actually made this ahead, but look how much soup we got. This is just meant to be one dinner and one lunch for 4 of us, but it gave us so much more. And we also ended up with this extra elbow macaroni. So this is such a great budget soup and so flavorful and so filling. I recommend it for everybody just to make anytime when you need to save some money. It's delicious. The next meal I'm making is another soup. That's why I'm going on about soup. This is a pinto bean soup, and I've had this on my list to make forever, and this is the perfect time to do it. And I was so incredibly pleased with how it turned out. I did need to cook my pinto beans first, so I chose an Instant Pot method. This recipe has a lot of things that I didn't have in it, but I was just trying to add what I did have to give the pinto beans some flavor. So I'm starting with 4 cloves of garlic, and I'm just grating those in using my microplane. The recipe also calls for like jalapeno and onion, and I'm not using those things. So I did end up using some onion powder, some chili powder, and some cumin. And then you need 4 cups of water with your drained and washed beans. Now, you do have a choice whether you want to soak those overnight ahead of time. Go for it if you want to. I didn't think ahead, and I rarely do. So that's the thing I love about the Instant Pot is that you can just pop everything in there and get it done quickly. The total amount of time you want to cook these in your Instant Pot is for 30 minutes if your beans are unsoaked, 15 if they are soaked. And yeah, it comes out with a delicious, flavorful bean, and I was able to use these in a pinto bean soup. And I'll put a recipe for pinto beans that you can soak and cook on the stove as well, because I know not everyone has an Instant Pot, and that should not deter you. You can absolutely cook beans that are as delicious on the stove. So for this soup, I am using my second onion and just dicing that up. This onion is key to the flavor of this recipe, but if you don't have one, you could definitely use onion powder. Now I'm just putting some olive oil or whatever oil you have in the bottom of a pan, and we are going to cook these onions over medium-high heat, saute them for about 4 to 5 minutes, and make sure to stir frequently. At this point, I'm adding in my can of fire roasted diced tomatoes. Wow, these are delicious. I want to buy these for everything from now on. And then I'm going to add my spices. I do have a teaspoon of oregano, a teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, a little bit of red pepper flakes if you'd like, and I'm also going to add in 3 garlic cloves that I'm going to grate in on my microplane again, as well as 1 medium potato diced. And you just want to stir everything around. If you have carrots too, and I definitely didn't buy carrots in this case, you go ahead and add those in. And then we're going to use 2 cups of broth. I use chicken bouillon in this case. You can use just water and salt. Use whatever you have. Even with those spices, if you don't have a few, it's okay. You probably do want like a chili powder or something like that, but I understand not having something like smoked paprika. Once this mixture comes to a boil, you want to let it simmer with the lid on for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you're going to add in your pinto beans. So I just used that can of fire roasted tomatoes and added my pinto beans, so I knew exactly how much, because we need 2 cans of pinto beans in this case. Stir those in and then cook for another 10 minutes until all of your veggies are softened. Now you can take all of half of your soup out and put it in a blender if you'd like, or you could use like a magic bullet or whatever you have to mix this up. I happen to have an immersion blender, which really helped to mash up about half of my soup, and you can see how this thickens your soup up but still leaves some chunky parts. This soup is incredible. Like, I will make it again and again and again. I can't believe it's taken me this long to make it. I enjoyed it so much.
Now this next meal is like an entire style. I was trying to make a soup that is like a ham and bean soup and ham, bean, potato soup. And it's from like one of those Great Depression recipes. And I found the potatoes, I found the seasoning blend. I was like, this is perfect. We're going to use some bouillon, and we're going to get maybe like a luncheon meat and then some beans. Now, the problem was the type of beans that I wanted, they didn't have in the dried beans. And so I was going to buy cans, and I'm like, I don't want to buy $1.25 cans of beans. That's way too expensive at the Dollar Tree. So what I found was these Campbell's Classics, and it had beans and ham already in it. So I'm like, this is great. This is the whole idea. Take your traditional soup and then add to it. And we actually used to do this in college. My best friend and I, we lived together in college, and we had something called poor man's soup. And we would take a can of soup that we had in the pantry, like we'd have like nothing left, a can of corn, and then maybe a can of tomato sauce. And you mix all that together and put some sour cream with it, and that is heaven. And we want to make that now. We're always like, oh, poor man's soup, that was so good. So this is definitely a different soup recipe. We're going to take 2 cans of that ham and bean. We're going to take the hash browns that I found in the freezer section. This is a huge thing of hash browns. Like, I ended up with extra. So not only do you get to make this, but you get extra. And then that seasoning blend that I am obsessed with, that is perfect for starting off on a soup. And then I'm using chicken bouillon that I already have, but you can get chicken bouillon at the Dollar Tree if you don't already have some. And you know, worst comes to worst, use some water and some salt, and that will give you all the flavor that you need. So I am super excited to make this for you, and I think it's going to turn out great. You could always go with the beans and the luncheon meat too, and that would also be a good option. So I am starting off with a little bit of oil in a pan over medium-high heat. I don't think the oil is 100% necessary because these are frozen, so they're kind of in water already, but hey, I added it, I had it. And I'm adding the entire thing of the seasoning blend because this is going to give tons of flavor. It's going to be delicious. So I'm basically just defrosting these in the pan and then cooking them up a little bit. You could totally just defrost them in the microwave ahead of time or leave them in the fridge for a little bit so that they already are defrosted and then cook them up. Your choice, however you want to do it. I think that'll be totally fine. And then I'm adding a little bit of garlic powder again because, like I said, this mix doesn't have any garlic in it, and you're definitely going to want some garlic in this soup. Okay, the water from the defrosting, it made it very steamy, but I'm adding about 1/2 to 3/4 of the package of the diced potatoes right now, and those are also not defrosted. So again, you could totally do that in the microwave ahead of time and cook those up or leave them in the fridge, but we're just putting them in frozen. It's just going to take a little bit longer to cook it this way. It's kind of your choice how you want to do it. The recipe I'm basing this off of has you add 2 cups of water and 3 cups of chicken broth. So I added 3 cups of chicken bouillon and 1 cup of water because we're also going to add in those cans of soup, and those are going to have liquid as well. And then adding in both cans of soup, and we're going to let this simmer for about 15 to 30 minutes. Let everything cook together. Make sure your potatoes are fully cooked through. Make sure all the flavors get cooked up. And that is going to be your soup. And now we took 2 small cans of soup and made them into something so much larger. You know, had you bought 4 cans of soup for the same price, you would nowhere near have gotten the same amount of soup that we have today.
As expected, each of these recipes is going to start off with 1 box of macaroni and cheese, and for some reason I ended up with the thick and creamy kind from Walmart, but it does not matter what type you have as long as you have the orange cheese one. You don't want like the white cheddar shells. I don't think that would, I mean, actually I think it would still be delicious. It would just be a little different, so I can't vouch for the taste on that and the design of the recipes. They are really designed to be working with your orange mac and cheese. So you just want to follow the directions on the back of the box when you're making your macaroni and cheese. And for this recipe, it's going to be as simple as adding a can of tuna and a little bit of peas to it. Now, you could go a step further and maybe even add some spinach. If you have some like frozen or fresh spinach, just make sure you wilt that down. You could put that in there. You could add a can of chicken even. I think chicken with some peas would be delicious in this as well. The great thing is this is something that you can make off of all shelf-stable pantry items. So it's not something you need to have on hand. And even like the milk, you can have shelf-stable milk and you'll be ready to go. And I have many a time, if I don't have butter or margarine to put in my mac and cheese, just substitute it either for a little bit of oil or just put extra milk in, or if I don't have milk, just put extra butter in, and the macaroni and cheese takes it very well. It is a very versatile meal option. So once you add that tuna in there, you want to make sure you drain that can, or if you have like a tuna in oil, I haven't tried that, but it could be delicious and it probably would add a little extra calories if you are looking for inexpensive calorie boosting items. Then I added about 1/2 cup of peas. I had just cooked these according to the package. They were frozen peas. You could also use canned peas if you have them on hand, and mix that well together. This was so shockingly delicious, and it's almost like, I remember a while back, my friends were into what they called, I think it was like tuna surprise or tuna noodle casserole, but I think it was called tuna surprise. And it's basically like mayonnaise, tuna, pasta, and any other veggies you can cut up in there. And it's really, really good. It's actually a great lunch. So this is kind of like a warm macaroni and cheese tuna surprise. And I was shocked and surprised and excited that my son Julian, who is obsessed with macaroni and cheese for lunch, liked this tuna with the addition of the peas. And I'm very, very happy about that, because now he's going to not only have his macaroni and cheese, which I was always a little bit nervous about, you know, the nutritional content. He's also going to have some protein and some vegetables.
Good.
Delicious, huh?
Yeah.
You gonna have that every day now?
100.
The next recipe is another one full of pantry staples. Again, you don't have to buy anything that is going to be perishable. You can just throw this together off of things you usually already have in your pantry. You want 1 cup of salsa, and I used like a medium salsa, and I'll tell you that the bite in that was actually perfect with this. But again, if you want to like feed it to younger children, you may want to go with mild. Then 1 can of canned corn, and I realized that wasn't going to fit in my pot, so we had to mix this in a larger container. Make sure to drain your canned corn, and then also drain and rinse a can of black beans. And you want to mix all of that together, and this makes just a fabulous little Mexican dish or flavor or taste. You could even add in like a little bit of garlic powder or onion powder if you want to, but I didn't do that, and I thought the flavor was great. I think that salsa really gives you all of the flavor that you need in this. And then you can serve this either with some sour cream and scallions. That's what I opted to do. You could put some fresh shredded cheddar over the top of it, or some maybe queso fresco. Really make it your own. I think a little cilantro would be good over this too, or just plain as it is just fine as well. There are so many choices and options for this, and this is just like this surprise like Mexican style casserole that you can do so easily, so quickly, and so inexpensive. For this next meal, we are shopping the freezer. I am looking for what we have in here to add to some simple baked potatoes. I just have russet potatoes. I rub them in a little bit of olive oil and put a little salt on them. I also poke them with a fork, then put them on some parchment paper in the oven and cooked them at 425 degrees for about 45 minutes. Now, a baked potato is so versatile. I'm just serving it with what I have. I'm adding some of those bacon pieces. The kids actually ended up loving those. I did have some fresh bacon on hand too. I shredded up like the last tiny little square of cheese that I had, and the last of some sour cream in a tub. So it's a great way to use up everything that is left. I also found in my freezer, what I was pulling out there was some chili that I had frozen, and I'm like, that's perfect just to put over a baked potato. Now, if you are buying these items at Walmart to make your baked potato, your potato is going to run you about 69 cents each. Chili is $1.24 for a can, and you probably use about a quarter of that. Broken down by serving, cheese is 23 cents, sour cream is 14 cents, and your total is $1.37 for 1 chili baked potato, and that is a fabulous meal. It is so good. Some other options are you could add some avocado, some salsa, and maybe some black beans and do like a fiesta baked potato or a Mexican baked potato. The options are endless when it comes to adding things that you already have around your house to a baked potato and making a whole meal out of it. We ended up just serving this with a salad from the garden, so that didn't cost us anything extra, and I was actually happy to use up some stuff that I found in my freezer. I was also hoping to maybe find some frozen broccoli, but I didn't have any, so that's also another option to add to your baked potato. And if you guys have ideas, feel free to please comment below on some great baked potato additives, because I would love to know.
Out of 5. Nom 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 nom. I give you 100 out of 100.
This next recipe is a simple rice and beans recipe, but it was a combination that I had never tried before. I am simply cooking up 1 serving of rice according to the package instructions. Now I'm going to use black beans for this. I'm just using a can that I had in my pantry, but if you have time or you think ahead or you're going to try and save a lot of money, go ahead and cook up some dried black beans, either in the Instant Pot or in a pot. I'll put some recipes down below to save some money on those. For my canned beans, I am just going to rinse those off before I cook them. I chose just to microwave mine and add a little bit of onion powder, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. But you can totally add some chili powder or even taco seasoning to that, or you can buy already seasoned black beans. Now this is the part of the rice and beans dish that I hadn't seen before. You're gonna cook up one over easy egg or as many as you're making for servings. I was just making this for lunch and it was just for me, so one serving, but this made enough for my whole family to eat. If I were to make it for them, I would have just made 4 eggs. You just wanna put rice in a bowl. Top that with your black beans and your fried egg, and that is it. And this is the same as those potatoes. You can make it your own. You can add anything you want to it. So I think a diced up avocado would taste good with this, as well as some salsa or sour cream, or you can go in a different direction and maybe even do like soy sauce and some vegetables. This meal as is absolutely delicious, such a great lunch, and it comes in at 44 cents a serving. So this is kind of a no-brainer for when you're just grabbing things, putting it together for the family. This is delicious. They will love it. That egg yolk in there tastes so good. This next recipe is called Poor Man's Chicken Salad. Now this one really intrigued me because if you can see those saltines off to the side, those are the secret ingredient. I had some leftover chicken from some drumsticks, so I just cut the chicken off of there. The recipe says you can use a can of chicken or you can use a whole chicken and shred it. That was kind of fascinating to me because I felt like a can of chicken versus a whole chicken is big difference in the amount of chicken. So I think this recipe is pretty loose, which is totally fine by me. Then you want to take some dill pickles and cut them into chunks. This is going to depend on how much you love pickles and how many you want to put in. So again, this recipe is very, very much up to the creator of the chicken salad. So I love pickles, so I put quite a bunch in there, and I don't think I'd recommend putting any more. That's about 2 cups of chicken and probably about a 1/4 cup of diced pickles. Now you also want to add in 1 sleeve of crushed saltines. And now because I hadn't made this recipe before and it really wasn't clear how much chicken I should be using and pickles, I did decide to use half a sleeve of saltines just to stay on the safe side. If I were to do it in the future, I might add the whole sleeve because why not? It turned out great with those, so I just wasn't sure. Were these going to be soggy saltines? Were they going to be crunchy? What was it going to taste like? It was a surprise. The saltines actually act like a great filler for this chicken salad and make it seem like there's more salad or more chicken when maybe there isn't. And I think that's the kind of poor man's part of it, is add in those saltines to bulk it up. But it really is fabulous. Like, you would never know that that was saltines in there. And I even read in the recipe, the woman said, "Oh, I've made this a million times and no one has ever questioned the saltines. No one's ever asked what was going on there." The recipe itself calls for 1 cup of mayonnaise, and it says you can do it to your liking, so it totally depends. I like a mayonnaise-y chicken salad myself, but a little bit will do you good if that's what you want to do. I think you could even do like a little olive oil, salt and pepper, whatever floats your boat for your chicken salad, you can add here. Even like a little mustard would be totally fine too. Now the final addition to this is 2 hard-boiled eggs, and mine were actually like cooking while I was making the salad, so that's why they're going in last, but you can put them in at any point, and I have to peel them with one hand because the baby's in the other hand, but that's what we're doing today just to get this chicken salad going. Overall, this recipe is awesome. It's a great way to stretch chicken that you already have. Kind of interesting too, because it's kind of a mix between almost like a chicken salad and an egg salad, but really for the most part it tastes like a chicken salad, and the saltines are just a great sub and way to bulk it up. This next recipe is for what is called camping dinner chicken quesadilla, because hey, it's easy to take canned chicken breast camping with you, so if you are going camping, this is a great idea. But it's also a great idea if you're just hanging around your house and you don't know what to make and you have a can of chicken. So to make this, you just want 1 larger can of chicken and about a half an onion diced up, and about 2 cups of shredded either cheddar, or I think I actually use Colby Jack cheese. I love Colby Jack cheese in a quesadilla. That's just a personal opinion. And then I apologize, this is just a weird jar of salsa, so it's got a strange top going on here. But you want to add 1 jar of your favorite salsa. We love the Chi-Chi's mild just because the kids really like it, and it's a simple flavor that's not super spicy. And that blanket down there, that's my son's comfort item. It is a king size, like fluffy blanket, and he calls it cozy, and it's like everywhere in our house, and it drags stuff around with it. I don't know if anyone's had that experience, but I'm like, can you get it out of the kitchen? But hey, look, it has a guest appearance on YouTube now, so I'm sure Tommy will be super proud. And yeah, just mix all of that together. I've never really done a quesadilla like this where you mix everything together, but I love this idea because then you get everything in every bite and you don't have like layers of stuff. It's super, super simple. So I'm just putting a little bit of butter in the bottom of my pan. That's how I like to make a quesadilla. You can use your favorite tortilla, whatever size you want to use, whatever type you want to use. And then go ahead and add just, 1/4 to 1/3 of the mixture, depending on how much you want to put in there and how many quesadillas you want to make. And this is super delicious. You want to cook this on a medium-low heat. I like to cook it low and slow kind of thing because I don't like to burn it. And you want to give it plenty of time so that your cheese can melt. And then flip it once it gets crispy on one side and do the same thing with the other side. These were so delicious and such a great recipe to make in a bind. You can really elevate what may have been on a different day just a plain cheese quesadilla and turn it into a full-on chicken quesadilla, restaurant quality, delicious meal. The next recipe is called Easy Rosemary Garlic and White Bean Soup from Budget Bites, and it is a budget saver, and it is so easy, and it is so delicious. So you just want to you're going to need 3 cans of Great Northern beans. We're going to take one of those cans and blend it up with all of the juices that are in the can, so you do not want to drain that. I'm just using my NutriBullet to do this, but you can use like a regular blender, or even if you didn't have something like that, you can just mash them around. Obviously, the puree is going to make it thicker and give you a better flavor, but I think this would still taste very, very good if you just mashed up some of your beans, and that would be just fine. So once those are pureed, you can just get started over on the stove. I'm just putting a couple tablespoons of olive oil in a small pot. This makes about enough for, it says 4, but I think maybe 3. They're not huge servings, but it's still really, really good. So put some oil in the bottom of a pan with 4 cloves of minced garlic and saute that for about a minute until fragrant. Then you want to add your pureed cannellini beans, and then you have 2 other cans of beans. Now, I actually only had 1, so I just worked with what I had, and I drained 1 can of beans, and I added that right to my soup. It would have been a little harder had I had a second can of beans, but the one was also just fine, and the flavor was still there. That is the key. All about the flavor and all about the taste. You want to add 2 cups of vegetable broth, or I'm using chicken bouillon, so whatever you have. And then we're going to add some spices. We're going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of dried rosemary and a 1/4 teaspoon of dried thyme and a pinch of crushed red pepper. And since I was just eating this and I was not going to serve it to the kids, I was going in there with the red pepper because I like a little spice. And then you want to add fresh cracked black pepper if you'd like to taste. And we're almost done. And this has been fast, right? You just want to place the lid on the pot, turn the heat up to medium-high, and bring it to a boil. And then once it's boiling, you want to turn the heat down to medium-low, take that lid off, and allow it to simmer for 15 minutes. And here is the final product. Wow, this was such a good lunch. It's so, so, so delicious. It's insanely cheap, and it's a great base, too. That's what a lot of the people in the comments were saying. Like, you could just add chicken to this. You could add extra different types of beans. There is a lot of flavor. You could add vegetables. It is a great, great soup. I want to thank you so much for watching today. I hope you got some amazing inspiration for some very inexpensive but very delicious meals. Make sure to like this video if you want to see more like this. Subscribe if you haven't already. And go ahead and click on this next playlist where you'll see all of the best budget meals from my channel.